Watch this.
The likelihood that we're going to get sued, if not from the DOJ, I agree with you on that, from a private group is pretty high.
That prediction came true almost immediately at the cost of the Idaho taxpayer. The state's new immigration law, already under legal attack, is now unenforceable. Idaho once put its foot down on becoming the nation's nuclear waste dump, but now that stance isn't so firm. The Idaho National Lab will soon see more spent fuel sent its way. So what's changed? You know, there are enough worries when it comes to parents dropping off their kids at the local city pool during the summer, but there could be another one added with the removal of certain regulations by the Idaho legislature.
I'm not worried about the supremacy clause on our bill, especially with the current administration and the changes that they're making. I don't think we're going to get sued by the federal government on this. And yes, there probably will be a private cause of action or private lawsuit against this from some entity, but we will see.
Well, we didn't have to wait long to see a lawsuit filed against House Bill 83 or the Immigration Cooperation and Enforcement Act. Immigration enforcement in cooperation with the Federal Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So could we call it the ICE Act, maybe? Anyway, the day Governor Brad Little signed House Bill 83 into law, the American Civil Liberties Union filed a class action lawsuit against it on behalf of a farm worker advocacy group, a nonprofit law firm, and 5 anonymous non-citizens. Well, enforcement is now not a thing with this new law, at least for now. A federal judge just put an injunction on it, blocking that enforcement or cooperation while the lawsuit works through the court system. This law would allow local law enforcement to ask about immigration status and document that status when someone is accused or being investigated for a crime. They can then share that information with ICE. First-time offense of being in Idaho undocumented would be a misdemeanor. Re-entry would be a felony. The law also created a new crime of felony trafficking a dangerous alien for anyone bringing in an undocumented immigrant into Idaho. But because of this decision today, none of it can be enforced as of now, which is, of course, the ultimate goal of the plaintiffs who call this law not only extreme, but unconstitutional. Here's Hunter Funk.
The law created a lot of fear in immigrant communities and amongst our plaintiffs here in Idaho. So with this preliminary injunction, communities can breathe a little bit easier.
A federal court has told the state of Idaho not so fast on House Bill 83, and it's what the American Civil Liberties Union is calling their first victory.
We've challenged the law's entry and re-entry crimes. So these are state immigration crimes that try to let state law enforcement basically enforce federal immigration law without the proper training and without the proper support. And so that's unconstitutional. It violates federalism principles, and we're really encouraged by the court's ruling validating that.
After 2 emergency restraining orders blocked the law to go into effect for the short term, now a judge granted a preliminary injunction, which means the law can't be enacted until the court decides whether it's unconstitutional or not. The ACLU of Idaho says it doesn't just impact Idahoans, but people passing through as well.
The law could affect anyone who travels through the state of Idaho, who's in the state of Idaho.
HB 83 is part of a growing trend in Republican-led states trying to take immigration enforcement into their own hands.
Few other states have tried to pass legislation like this, and it's been blocked in every case. So in Texas, Oklahoma, Iowa, and Florida, there are similar laws that have all been blocked. So we think that Idaho passed a law that is clearly unconstitutional, and we think that it's not a good use of anyone's time or resources.
The ACLU of Idaho says it's not only unconstitutional, but puts immigrant communities in danger.
We're going to continue to fight on this lawsuit until we obtain a permanent injunction that protects immigrant communities here in Idaho, and we're not going to stop fighting to protect our immigrant communities.
And when it comes to the co-sponsors of the bill, Representative Jaron Crane and Bruce Skog, on what they're thinking about this injunction after it came out, well, we've yet to hear back from them. So for now, Brian, like we mentioned, it's pretty much put on hold.
And that's not unusual for laws like this as they work their way through the courts. Representative Crane, I do remember he mentioned this is based on a Texas bill, Texas law, and that law is currently in the courts, as you just mentioned.
Correct.
But he's pretty sure that he said the Supreme Court has already said it's good to go and can be enforced. But there was a question as to why not wait until what happens with that Texas bill. Both he and Skog were pretty confident that this bill is better than the Texas bill, so they just didn't want to wait. It's kind of how they put it.
That holds up. Yeah, I was going to say, and obviously other ones are trying to challenge it as well.
Yeah, but here we are. It's tied up in court, so We'll see how it plays out. Thank you very much, Hunter. Well, what a difference a day makes. Yesterday, we talked about the fundraising efforts to cover the cost of cultural stoles for the upcoming college graduations across the state. With Idaho universities forced to close their diversity, equity, and inclusion offices late last year, that left nobody on campus to continue this tradition. Well, today, one of those GoFundMe campaigns has been suspended because, according to Boise State's Inclusive Excellence Student Council, which is part of the Associated Students of BSU, they say, and they posted on social media today, the school, quote, decided to donate the stoles to a nonprofit who will then make sure the graduates get them at no cost. So we are still waiting confirmation from BSU about what this might entail. But the original goal of the GoFundMe was about $7,300 to pay for those stoles for the students. And by the time the campaign was stopped, we're told they raised about $2,800 of that. And all of that money will be returned to the donors now. And while they are still finalizing plans to distribute those stoles, the Inclusive Excellence Student Council hopes this response from the community will get people more involved and informed about what these student clubs do, in case your support is needed in the future. We are exactly 4 weeks away from city pools opening for the season, at least in Boise. Meridian, Nampa, they look like they're holding off until June. And right around that time is when local television stations start doing news stories on water safety tips. What if we told you today it's the pool itself you might have to worry about this summer? There was a bill passed this last legislative session that was couched as just a regulatory cleanup bill, kind of get rid of some of the red tape, clean things up a little bit on our code books. Basically, there were duties assigned to the Department of Health and Welfare that the agency no longer dealt with. However, this bill did contain some unintended consequences, because of course it did. Like the fact local pools across the state of Idaho will no longer be required to be inspected by the local health district. Aspen Shumpert looked into what this might mean for pool safety.
I'm not sure they all realize the significance of how this will potentially impact public health into the future.
For decades, local health districts have been performing inspections on public pools per requirement of the state's Department of Health and Welfare.
And we'll look at everything from water quality, water clarity, the types of chemicals that are being used to make sure they're appropriate.
Those inspections also covered critical safety elements like proper signage and secured handrails.
I think the public expectation for swimming pools is to have some assurity of oversight to make sure that they're operating in a healthy and safe manner so that you don't get sick.
For Central District Health, which covers Ada, Boise, Elmore, and Valley counties, Director Russ Duke says they inspect 36 public pools each year.
Most of the time when things go well, it's great, and when it doesn't, it can be really bad for public health.
But those inspections are formally ending July 1st. House Bill 202, which is a 20-page health bill revising various regulations under the Department of Health and Welfare, has a few lines ending the state oversight for public swimming pools.
These rules are overly burdensome and too prescriptive. They even include provisions regulating the dimensions of diving boards. This bill takes DHW out as the middleman and allows for local control. The local health boards have statutory authority in 39414 to enforce health regulations and to do all things required for the preservation and protection of the public health and preventative health.
Changes local health districts are interpreting as removing required health inspections.
And the changes to the Department of Health and Welfare's authority, no longer having authority to essentially create rules for public swimming pool safety. The rules themselves that we use to do our inspections will also become obsolete at that point in time.
Director Duke says those inspections on public pools would only happen if the public pool operators ask CDH to do them.
Would they like our assistance either from an inspection standpoint or training standpoint, and that's what we're likely going to move forward with into the future.
Director Duke says eliminating preventative inspections could put public health at risk.
That's a reality, and those things can happen, even with the most well-run swimming pools, but things can and do go wrong. And that's often when we'll get called in. The majority of complaints that we get today aren't from the inspected pools, it's from the ones that are not inspected.
Director Duke says they are looking to the future on this and hoping this might even spark new partnerships with unregulated private pools and even newly splash pads that we're seeing turn up, and asking maybe that, they could turn to their local health districts to do some of those voluntary inspections now that nothing is going to be required.
Okay, so voluntary inspections, you're saying this summer these pools are then just opting in to have inspections?
Yeah, so there's a little history there. This isn't the first time deregulations have happened. Private pools used to be regulated, included in all of this, and then in 2000,
like hotel pools,
hotels, gyms, private neighborhood pools. Then it turned to just public pools in 2000. So it seems like we're kind of going back to private and public pools being on the same level there.
Should people be worried about the fact that these inspections are no longer required?
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Also, local control. It's turning to local control. I asked Senator Van Orden, who's a sponsor of this bill, what that really means. She said that could look like city ordinances getting passed or health districts passing their own regulations. I took that back to the health district, and they said that is a possibility, but would have to be passed by legislature, and that seems unlikely to do. So they're not allowed to really enforce anything now that there's no rules set in place.
Right, it's okay, local control, but then nobody's doing it.
Right.
Okay, local control for safety, but not, for flags. I got you. Thanks, Aspen.
Well, what a difference 24 hours can make. Look at this gorgeous Wednesday we're enjoying. Our wrap up to April today is stunning. We're sitting at 66 degrees in Boise, blue skies over the Treasure Valley, Magic Valley, same mid 60s over in Twin Falls. After a foggy start in McCall, we're in the mid 50s there with a beautiful clear sky over Payette Lake. Some clouds over Sun Valley, but still lovely there as well. Temperatures up around 60 degrees for the Wood River Valley. And remember, normally we are around 67 degrees for our final day of April. So 68 is where we forecast that we would get today. So we've about hit that number. Our morning low was at 40 this morning, so a little cooler than typical for the final day of the month, which is 43 degrees. But still, all in all, a really pleasant end to April. And we have a nice warm start to May coming our way. Here's that satellite and radar image. You can see there's not much happening across the Northwest. We have high pressure that is building in from the West Coast, and that will be our dominant weather feature for the next 2 days. Now we're watching a shakeup for the weekend, but here goes that system that brought us that unsettled weather yesterday. We're seeing just a few little blips on our radar returns in the far eastern portion of the Central Mountains, but for the most part, this system is over and done with across the Gem State, and that will allow a lot of sunshine to stick around today, tomorrow, and Friday. So your Wednesday evening looking gorgeous. Sunset tonight, 8:46, clear skies to enjoy until then. We'll be in those mid 60s until sunset, slowly sliding into the upper 50s by about 10 o'clock tonight. But still, your outdoor plans, if you kids have sports practices, you're just trying to get that walk or jog in this evening, perfect conditions for that. And then look at our kickoff to May tomorrow. Temperatures soar into the mid 70s, above normal for the 1st of May. Sunshine sticks around, and the breezy winds we've had in play today, those will back off as well. So a picture perfect Thursday. This is what I call Mary Poppins Day, practically perfect in every way. And we will stay nice and warm through Friday. So the ridge of high pressure that will amplify in from the west reaches its peak, or the axis will be right over our neck of the woods on Friday. That will take our temperatures into the 80s to wrap up the work week. Very warm. However, already we're seeing this big dip in the jet stream developing offshore by Friday. That is a system that's going to start making its way across the Pacific Northwest on Saturday. A cold front comes through our area Saturday afternoon. That will drop temperatures, will bring some unsettled weather in the form of some showers and thunderstorms. The main piece of energy from this system cuts off and dives south. So we're on the northern periphery, but still we have a chance of showers, even storms Saturday, likely continuing into Sunday. But after that, by next Tuesday into the middle of next week, another ridge of high pressure starts establishing itself, and that will lead to some sunny, beautiful conditions for the work week next week. So I know, unfortunately, we're in this pattern where the weekends are a bit unsettled. The work week is nice and sunny and mild, but still we will have a lot of sunshine for the next couple of days. That's my silver lining here. Look at the Magic Valley tomorrow. Just beautiful. 70 for Twin Falls, Burley, and Shoshone. Morning lows in the upper 30s to around 40 degrees. Tons of sun for the Central Mountains. Low 60s for Sun Valley. We'll see 65 for Haley and Fairfield tomorrow. Sunny skies for the West Central Mountains. McCall lands at 65. Same for Donnelly and Cascade. Council at 73. Garden Valley, you have a stunner of a Thursday as well at 73 degrees. Emmett will see 76 degrees. Same for Weiser, Ontario, and Caldwell. Morning lows around 40, so still a little bit cool in the morning. But if you grab the jacket on your way out the door, you will not need it in the afternoon. Boise lands at 75 tomorrow, 73 for Mountain Home. So most places about 8 degrees above average as we kick off the month of May. Friday, even warmer, 83 degrees. This is our 7-day outlook. And then Saturday, still hitting the mid-70s, but that cold front comes in the afternoon. That will trigger some showers and stray storms. Keep that in mind as you're planning your Saturday night plans. And then we stay breezy Sunday and Monday with some lingering showers, potentially into Monday. After that, look at that warm up. We're back into the 70s and near 80 degrees by the middle of next week.
Well, a federal judge has ordered more transparency during Idaho executions, and that could apply to the man accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students. Meanwhile, staffing shortages with Ontario's fire and rescue has meant more than just delayed response times. Here's Jude Binkley with today's 411.
A federal judge says the Idaho Department of Correction needs to allow media witnesses at executions to watch as lethal injection drugs are prepared and administered. In a ruling Tuesday, the judge ordered IDOC to provide audio and visual access for news organizations for all aspects of the execution. In a lawsuit filed last year, several news groups sued IDOC's former director, Josh Tewalt, saying the prison was acting unconstitutionally by not showing important steps during a lethal injection execution. There are currently no executions scheduled in Idaho. The judge overseeing the Moscow murders case says the death penalty is still on the table. He denied Brian Kohberger's second attempt to remove the death penalty as a possible sentence. Kohberger's attorneys argue the state violated his due process rights, but in court documents filed Tuesday, the judge determined there were no violations and denied the request to strike the death penalty. This is the second time his attorneys tried to get the death penalty removed. The first time they brought up Kohberger's autism diagnosis, saying executing someone with autism would constitute cruel and unusual punishment. The trial, set to start in August, is a little more than 100 days out. A severe staffing shortage at Ontario Fire and Rescue continues to hinder its ability to respond to emergencies. Its chief says the agency needs more firefighters to keep the community safe. But to do that, its budget needs to grow. Chief Clint Benson says his agency is called out about 2,500 times a year. He adds at times only 2 firefighters are working. He would like at least 4, a number OSHA recommends. That's why he's asking the city to add roughly $350,000 to the agency's annual budget this spring. City officials are expected to make budget decisions around mid-May. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Jude Binkley.
I know we mentioned we were going to continue our coverage of the nuclear waste being sent back to INL in eastern Idaho with the agreement, with the waivers to the 1995 agreement. We had some technical difficulties, so hopefully we can bring that story to you tomorrow. So bear with us on that. We apologize, but again, hopefully bring that coverage to you tomorrow. Let's get to your comments from today. Not too many to share, kind of a light day, but this one from Maria says, shame on you, I guess referring to us here at Channel 7. If they're criminals, they need to go. I don't care what state we live in, and I live here in Idaho, Channel 7. You need to start telling the truth. This is from Maria. Again, Maria, here's the thing. It's not a crime to be in the state or in this country without documentation. Yes, it's a crime to cross the border, but it's not a crime to be in the state, according to federal law. So they just created that as a crime now. But there is an injunction, so it is not enforceable. That's kind of the nuance of this and our entire immigration enforcement policy when it comes to the United States. That's the difference there. Good heavens, another legislative decision to make things less safe with regard to now Department of Health and Welfare not overseeing pool inspections, public pool inspections. Why on earth would they want to take public pool safety features away? Unbelievable. From Susan in Meridian. And this one from Tony in Boise. Positive rights like health require the government to do something, like provide health. Negative rights like personal medical decisions require the government to not do something, which would lead to arresting doctors like we have with our abortion law. Idaho has a bad public health policy, says Tony in Boise. That's his opinion. That's what he says. A lot of people have that opinion right now, though. Tell you what, if there's another way you want to get connected with the 208, you can do that by email at the208@ktvb.com. You can also find this show or any of the shows that you have not seen. In case you missed one, it's on our YouTube channel. They are all there, and you can go back, well, pretty much as far as you can, I think. So enjoy those, check those out, and again, we'll be back here tomorrow, hopefully with that story from the INL. See you then.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.